So we'll start. Hello, welcome to the Real Knowledge Podcast. I'm your host, Terrence. Today we have a special guest, my man, Danny. Danny is an accountant and he has so much knowledge for business owners, entrepreneurs. And the best part about it is I remember when he first went to open up his accounting firm. We went to Fuddruckers. You remember that, right? We went, had lunch. We talked about it, brainstormed. Hey, this is what I have in mind. This is my what I want to do. And fast forward to now, we're seeing a big change. You're successful, and now you want to pay it forward, helping other entrepreneurs start their business and give them advice. And it's awesome what you're doing, Danny. Give me a little bit, tell the people out there what it is how you started this entrepreneurship and tell me a little bit about the accounting.
Sure. Well, I was in corporate world for a very long time. I'm one of the old Burdine's disciples, worked for Burdine's for 17 years, wow. Did retail, know the background, so I understand from several ends on the marketing end and also on the manufacturing end how things work. I also had a little stint with Perry Ellis, a neighbor here in Doral, for some time, and that's where we met when we went to Fuddruckers. Yeah. So I prepared taxes occasionally for some friends and family, and just decided to go at it and see if I can launch a business on my own. I wasn't the entrepreneurial type. I wasn't the risk taker, if you will. And it turned out that I needed a little nudge from my daughter, who was usually my inspiration. And I thought it out, and it seemed to make sense. I tested it, really planning for failure. Not a lot of advice. I didn't have a lot of folks to go to. I didn't have a lot of mentors to bounce off ideas. And I tried it. It worked. And 15, 16 years later, here we are. Yeah. And my business is predominantly a tax business. I am a Me Too preparer in Coral Gables, so it's an accountant in Coral Gables. But our niche is really twofold. In addition to preparing regular 1040 returns, this is the season. We also help out folks who have ideas in businesses. And they aspire to be better than themselves today, and they aspire to grow an idea and be profitable and market it, and don't really know how to do it, how to validate it, where to start. We help them with that. And then we also have an aspect of our business, which is what's called representation. Representation with the IRS basically entails folks who get in a lot of trouble with the IRS, folks who, the IRS is harassing them, and we operate on the capacity of what an attorney would, but only with tax matters, and we represent them in front of the IRS regarding those tax matters.
So let's dig into that a little bit,
okay.
And then we'll go and talk about the promotions of businesses and entrepreneurship. On the IRS side of it, what exactly does that entail? So I go and I ask you, Danny, I owe back taxes for 10 years, and the IRS is saying that I owe $500,000. What do you do at that point? Is that what you do? You help them now negotiate this tax lien, or what happens?
There are various aspects to it. Usually, the folks who solicit our services are already in big trouble with the IRS. They have had a lien against their home. They have ignored letters. They may be going through a life transition. The IRS is not privy to that, so they really don't care. So what we do is, the first thing we do is we attempt to stop anything, any aggressive action by the IRS.
So garnishing wages?
Well, correct. There could be garnishing wages. There could be levies. There could be garnishing bank accounts.
So tell me what's a levy? What is
that? A lien is a hold, and a levy is a take. So okay. They can levy future refunds. They can levy bank accounts. They can levy future payroll. So there's a lot of things that can happen. The liens are a little more invasive because, particularly with fluctuating interest rates, a lot of people want to maneuver with equities in their homes and they can't.
But can you, let me ask you a question though, because we are in the state that we have homestead. What happens in that case that, I owe the IRS, let's say X amount of money? What happens because we do have homestead? They can't, do they put a lien? They can't put a lien on your house, can they? What happens?
They can. So what happens is they put a lien on any asset that you own, not just your home or your homestead. So what happens is you are requested by the IRS to tap into any equity in your home if you have a significant debt. And if you cannot get financing because you don't make enough or the value of properties have skyrocketed to the point where you can't tap into some of that equity, what the IRS requires is a denial letter. It's its own industry where we would solicit from specific mortgage brokers to attempt to get denial letters for our clients.
Really?
Because that's all the IRS requires.
How interesting.
Yeah, a lot of folks owe money and the IRS says, listen, you've got equity in your house, take it out, or if you can't take it out, give us a letter saying that you can't take it out, and they're okay with that.
Because it's so odd because you have, all these, like OJ Simpson. He came over here running away from all the lawsuits in LA. He came over here, he bought a huge house. He put a lot of money in that house I think it was in Pinecrest.
Yeah.
And then they couldn't go after his assets. So what's the difference then from that person to the IRS? Is the IRS, they can't just take your house. They have to tell you, hey,
correct,
take out a loan, but and then your credit's garbage at that point.
Right.
So obviously they can't. So that makes kind of sense.
Right. It has to be in the best interest of the IRS without creating what's called financial hardship. If there's a retired family that doesn't have future earning potential, they're on fixed incomes, easy peasy. That the IRS will accept that. If it's somebody who is has future business potential, future income potential, usually what the IRS looks at is they look at a vast array of possibilities of making this payment, and if they don't see or accept your denial letter because you have future earning potential, the IRS will go at it several different ways. So to combat that, we have all these other mechanisms that we have in place. We have offer and compromise. We can say it's currently non-collectible, but it might be in the future. You win the lottery, they're taking your money. So there's a variety of ways to address it. Now, with respect to having a big debt, the next step after quelling and putting a hold on the IRS's aggressive action, what we then do is we validate what it is that you owe. In many cases, what you owe is not exactly what you owe.
Isn't it like a calculation there? I remember I sold the house. I didn't get any money for the house, but title at that point did not report that I didn't make any money. So now the IRS just said, oh, this guy didn't file.
Correct.
Hey, he cashed in X amount of money, and I'm
correct.
And I'm like, I had no money.
Right. That's correct.
You're so I got screwed on one end, and then I'm having to fight it. Right. So you have to be careful when it comes to that sort of stuff.
That's a popular issue, which is the title company is required to submit the gross gains, by virtue of a series called 1099s. Anything 1099 is income. It isn't offset by its basis. So you may have had a loan against it, and you bought a $500,000 house, and you had a $500,000 loan. Mm-hmm. You made no money off of it. In fact, you may have lost money, but the value of what that gain is gets reported to the IRS. Oftentimes, title companies don't actually provide the 1099 to the folks who sold the property, but they do issue it to the IRS.
Right.
So the person will get a letter a year later saying you owe X amount of money, when in reality they don't.
So is that also like a problem filing? Because let's
Of
say
course.
if you're a good accountant, like yourself,
Yeah.
you would actually catch that for your customer because you're like, hey, you closed on a property for this much, and in my taxes, you're going to make sure that that's not going to show. And if they don't do that, then IRS, I guess, estimates what it's going to be, right?
Right, correct. There's a variety of things that could go wrong with that. Normally, anything that produces an IRS debt that's greater than $25,000, the IRS gets very aggressive and limits the possibilities you have to liquidate the value of that tax liability. So, to your point, that's exactly what we do. We put a hold on the IRS's actions, and what we do is we validate the value of that debt,
right.
And then if there's anything beyond that, we go ahead and address it.
Right. All right. No, that's good. It's good to have a good accountant because they could catch all these little issues that you have, and that issue could cost you thousands of dollars because now you have to fight. Once you're in that predicament, you have to fight the IRS because they're going to believe whatever they filed, and they're like, "Well, show me proof." So they will have an issue on that. So
a popular misconception is that the IRS wants to take your money. That is not the case.
Okay.
A lot of folks have an innate fear of the IRS, which makes me a lot of money. The general public's fear of the IRS makes me a lot of money. But the truth is that the IRS, most IRS agents aren't appraised annually at the value of what they collect. No, they close deals. They just want to make sure that the situation is closed.
Okay.
You have a $500,000 home sale and an IRS letter that you've been ignoring for 3 or 4 years because penalties and interest are insurmountable. You're in the $700,000 range at that point.
Right.
So that's usually the clients that we get. They're nervous. They don't know where to go. They don't understand what to address. They've contacted the IRS and listened to Kenny G music for 45 minutes before they actually speak with someone. And we actually get them situated and we begin to address the issue.
Right. So now you have a problem with the IRS. You know who to contact. Absolutely going to help you out. Now let's get into the meat and potatoes, because this podcast is made because I want to help entrepreneurs get out of the rut that they might be in, or inspire new entrepreneurs from going after their dreams, or even like an older one that might be just stuck, just going around in circles. I'm comfortable here. I want you to talk about now promoting those new businesses that want to come in and start, getting into the entrepreneurship, which, as we know, when you get your own business, you're not going to be working less than your regular job. All right.
That's correct.
It is 24/7. So mind you, now this is your life. It's your puppy. So you got to make sure that you address it. Nobody's going to tell you to go to work. Nobody's going to tell you to get up early. You're your own boss. So make sure that your mindset is there when you're going to open up this new company, because it's not an easy task. So tell me how you're going to help these new businesses with the whole process.
Well, in the world of entrepreneurs, the first issue that comes up is that you have to make sure that you're ready for it. And ready for it doesn't mean the time, doesn't mean financing, doesn't mean support. It means a decision. You have to make a decision. There's the old adage that says, every journey begins with its first step. You have to take the first step. You have to make a determination that you're going to try it. Right. Failure is inevitable. Pain is inevitable. That's going to happen. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I instill is to make sure that you validate what it is that you're going to do. Whatever your idea is, validate it. And it's difficult to validate because there aren't a lot of folks who you can bounce ideas off of, or if you have a fantastic idea, you don't want to share it with anyone so it gets stolen. So I usually suggest for them to start a cartoon version of their idea. And what does that mean? If you're not ready to launch anything because you're nervous, you're living paycheck to paycheck, don't actually run the idea. but pretend that you ran the idea. Where would your office go? Don't pick up a map and look what your office would go. Get in your car on a Sunday afternoon and go drive where it would be. Who would work for you? How many desks do you have? What is the financing? Where are you going to get your clients? How are you going to validate that those clients are going to come in? I don't do hopes. I don't do candle lighting. Whatever you do for inspiration, you do that on your own. Does it work or does it not work? And usually what our services are is to validate that the idea is a coherent idea. It's got legs. That competition can be offset to some degree, the level of financing required to run the idea. And a very terrible thing may happen to you when you launch your idea. You may be successful. A lot of folks, one of the problems we run into that never get anticipated is that they are incredibly successful at what they're doing. It's far bigger than they originally thought it was going to be, and they don't anticipate, So what we do is we first understand the financing that comes into it. How much are you investing? You're borrowing $30,000 from your parents' house to launch your widget idea. Does it make sense? How are you going to validate your income? How are you going to validate your clients? Where's the growth? Are you going to need a van? Like, where's your office? And those are the tangible mile markers of business growth. You never plan an idea from inception. The dumbest thing we could possibly do is start the idea. You always plan a business as if it were year 3. Once you're at a saturation point, what does that look like? Who's your secretary? How many offices do you have? What is the value of your income?
Right.
Because in addition to launching a business, which is infused with optimism, nobody comes in with this is not going to work. Everybody has incredible optimism. You also have to be prepared for failure. And failure is a wonderful, wonderful lesson. Failure is not the end of the world. It is a metric to determine when the idea didn't work. It isn't the entire idea that didn't work. It may be an aspect of the idea that needs to be tweaked.
Right. Yeah, it's like what Thomas Edison said, that he failed 10,000 times. And he said, no, I didn't fail. I actually found out what didn't work.
Right.
To get
That's a good point. Yeah.
To get to the light. So it was like he made it seem as it was a positive every time he failed, because now he was closer to getting to what he wanted. So how is it that somebody has an idea and they're like, man, I really am scared to get into XYZ. They should call you because you already have worked with so many different businesses from A to Z. So you kind of maybe even ran into that type of business. So your knowledge is so there's so much knowledge there that you could then help them. Is that how you do it?
Right. So what we usually like to do is keep things very simple and just have a in-person session, get on a spreadsheet, talk through the ideas, run the numbers. Does it make sense? And usually what happens is the value of the potential growth is usually greater than what the person originally intends. The only problem is that expenses aren't anticipated. There is a variety of things that aren't anticipated.
Right.
So what we do is we kind of lay in the pitfalls so that you understand what's expected. And it's all a matter of timing, because if I'm going to launch my idea and I think I'm going to do it in the next 3 months and I run into obstacles, you didn't run into obstacles. All you did is you just delayed the amount of time for the idea.
Right.
In the mortgage world, if you don't have the credit score or enough money down or cash on hand or whatever the case may be, it's just a matter of time. You can fix your credit score a little later. You can amass a lot of credit scores and down payment money and things like that. The same holds true for businesses. There may be an accreditation that's required. There may be a credential that's required. There may be, maybe it's, the shoes are too big for you, but maybe you can get a partner. It doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means there's other ways to achieve what it is you do. I usually I have to sign a non-compete and a disclosure letter for things that are really, really good ideas, that are patent potential type of ideas.
Right.
And those things are phenomenal. I can't reveal who the businesses are, but we have a good $6 or $7 million businesses that we launched from inception. So
Nice.
so we're very excited about that.
That's good to hear. It's always hard to start that business, and it's the unknown which is the hardest. For instance, if you're gonna rent this location, and let's say you're gonna do some improvements, and it takes a little longer than expected, you have to take that in consideration and say, okay, let me make sure that if I'm gonna say it's 3 months, let's do 6 months to make sure that we're covered, because that could put you out of business, because one little mistake like that, if you don't have enough funding, could mess you up. So then now you're back to the drawing board.
Right.
So I think that's a great tool that they could start using, is using Danny and his resources, because you're going to really help an entrepreneur get to the next level. Because like we all know, when we first start, we all have to start with every single position, and we're the top hat that's doing everything.
Exactly.
So now you're going to help them say, okay, this job requires 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people. You need to replace yourself on all 7.
Right.
And if that's that's what I'm getting at,
Right.
what you do. So it's something really helpful. I would have loved to have that when I started my business, and I didn't have that. One of the reasons I started the podcast is because I think that's very helpful for people to know what to do. And there's a lot of podcasts out there that the people are just too big. A billionaire comes and he goes on the podcast, I did this, I did that, Of course, now you're looking at him saying, there's no way I could get to that stage, to $1 billion. But you have to start somewhere and then build your way up. So you're going to help them build that process.
Right.
Step by step, which is it's incredible.
There are no guarantees, so it's a very scary proposition. But the number one killer for all small businesses, and it holds true, is optimism. That's the number one killer. The number one savior is planning. Does this idea work? And if it does work, how can I sustain it? And if it doesn't work, what aspect about it is it that doesn't work? And if those things come in line and all the stars align, usually folks they either have a bad idea that we can anticipate and say, listen, don't do this because this is the potential obstacles that you'll experience. Right. Okay. Or tweak it and launch it in this particular way. Or we have folks who are just wildly successful. And it's very fulfilling to see, but you have to get started. Every single person that's successful, it holds true in every single case. They could kick themselves for not having started earlier or sooner. They just didn't feel confident enough, and
right.
It's just
scary. It's scary. You're putting all your marbles in one thing, and you're like, this either has to make it or break it, and it's scary for a lot of people.
When you decide that you want to do something, and this holds true in anything, all your focus goes to that. And what winds up happening is you will wake up in the morning with a new idea, with a new wrinkle, you'll learn the new vernacular, you'll learn aspects of the industry. It's just your entire life becomes your dream. And when that dream and that motivation kicks in to high gear, and I'm not a motivational guy, but when that starts to kick into, that's all that matters. So it isn't a 9-to-5 thing. It is, to your point earlier, it's all that we do. It's what you believe in, it's what you're driven to do, and normally that attitude and that careful planning usually bodes itself in success.
So I'm going to go back to what you first started when we first started the podcast.
Okay.
Before we finish up, I want to ask you, give me the story of how you started the business because your daughter inspired you.
Okay.
What is it? Tell me that little story.
Okay.
Because I think I want to hear it.
Okay.
I just want to hear it.
And thank you. I've never really shared this with a whole lot of folks, and it's a very personal story. I take my daughter. We're divorced, and it was my weekend, and I take my daughter to a water slide. And they had a water slide up in Broward somewhere. I forgot where it was. And she goes with a few friends. And then I go up there with them because they couldn't go without a grown-up. And Amanda, my daughter, wants to go on the really scary, steep water slide. And I told her, Mamita, all you have to, it's going to be safe. Just do what the guy says. Put your hands in front of your chest and just go and just jump. You'll be fine. Okay, if you want, I'll go down there and wait for you or whatever. And she says, okay, Papi, I'm going to go. That's it. Many years later, I'm a corporate guy. I'm a retail guy. I know what I'm doing. I dance around spreadsheets. We've had the opportunity to meet wonderful people during my stint at Burdines. Met George Foreman, Linda Evans, a bunch of famous people, Emeril Lagasse and those guys. And I felt very safe and confident and comfortable in my 9-to-5er and steady paycheck W-2, but I wasn't making enough. It just and I knew I had this uncomfortable, unsettling feeling that I needed to do more. I knew what I was doing. I was pretty good at accounting. I was pretty good at taxes. Pretty good at business analysis. That's all I did for 17 years at Burdines. So I thought of launching a business and decided not to. It was going to be too costly. I needed an office in Coral Gables. The rents were too high. I just gave myself all these incredible obstacles. And it's fear. It's basically fear. All these obstacles, financial obstacles and support, it's all fear. And what I decided to do was do exactly that, the cartoon version of it. What would it look like? Where would the office be? And it's really funny how things start to fit together. The square pegs go in the square holes. It just happens. And I needed to launch it. I needed some money. I just met a girl that went to your high school. And I asked her for $2,000. This is a single mom. And we just met. We were dating for a couple of months, and here's this guy asking this single mom. I didn't have a penny to my name, and I asked her for $2,000, just $2,000. And I had him in hand, and I wasn't sure if I was going to launch the business. It was too lofty of a goal. And my daughter tells me, I explained it to my daughter. I love talking to my daughter, and she says, "Papi, just jump." And I didn't know how to react. And it was true. Just jump. And everything made sense. All the obstacles could be quelled. All the obstacles weren't, so insurmountable that they couldn't be, overcome. Mm-hmm. And I jumped. And I launched my business. It was a 1040 tax preparation business. I wasn't really ready to do corporations. Then we added a corporate aspect to it. Then all the corporate guys that were coming in were making incredible mistakes in the running of their business, not in the tax piece of it. Right. Like, why are you doing this and why are you doing that? And well, I don't know. That's what I told. And I found that there were certain aspects to the operation of the business that could be improved, and it came second nature to me. So I found the niche, and that's where we began developing the business aspect, the business creation aspect right. of our business.
Well, I usually end with the question, what would you give advice to a young entrepreneur or whatever? But he said it in a nutshell, and I'm going to leave it as just jump, Bobby. That's it.
Just jump.
I think that, and I even got teary-eyed because I'm thinking, if my kids tell me that, I'll be like, dying. So I'm like teary-eyed right now because the just jump, hit home.
Yeah.
and you do it for your kids. You do it to give your kids more.
Absolutely.
And it was just, I really wanted to hear it, and I didn't think it was going to hit me as hard, because it's such a great story of, hey, you told me to jump.
Yeah.
You just jump.
Yeah.
Exactly so right. it came full circle, and it was awesome. I'm going to have all Danny's information down below, his social media, where you could contact him. He is for sure a person you want to get to know if you're opening up a business. If you have a business that's existing, he could help you in every aspect that is business related. I have no doubt that this guy is one of the best at what he does. And I want to again thank you again for being on the show. You're a superstar. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, T. Appreciate everything.